Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel, and today we are going to be talking about tips for people who live in apartments or maybe even small rent houses. Now, I don't live in an apartment or rent house anymore, but I did for several years. I lived in a couple of apartments while I was in college, and then for several years after I graduated and I was working full time. And then also I have lived in a couple of rent houses as well. I think a lot of times in the prepper community, videos and information tends to focus on if you have something like a homestead or you have a property with a bunch of acres that allows you to store water, store fuel, have all these different types of things, whereas folks that have maybe a smaller living arrangement are kind of overlooked. So I started thinking about things that I wished I knew back when I lived in an apartment or rent house that would have helped me be more prepared, and that's what I'll be sharing with y'all today. And the first tip that I have for those that live in something like an apartment or a rent house is know your limitations. There are things that you can do, and then there's things that you cannot do living in kind of a smaller setting. So for example, you're not really going to be able to utilize like large 55-gallon water storage drums, but there are things that you can do to help you, have water, be able to procure more water as time goes on. Even though you might not be able to put a rain catchment system in your gutters, there are other ways that you could collect rainwater later on, which we'll talk about in a second. And then also, as far as power goes, a gas generator's probably going to be out just because apartments, they tend to be, the buildings very close together. So there's not really much of a safe place to put that generator. And since there's so many people around, that's a big security concern. So you don't want that generator being stolen or people constantly, hey, can I borrow your generator? Hey, can I borrow your generator? Because the population density is just so high. Somebody hears that generator, people are going to come out of the woodwork to use it. Then understand the types of disasters or emergencies that you can live through. So things like weather emergencies, those are completely doable. Like you get snowed in or, a multi-day power outage. That's perfectly fine. You can do that in an apartment. But longer term situations, those aren't going to be survivable in an area where you have a lot of people around and you don't have a whole lot of land or natural resources to utilize. And the time frame for that might vary by location. In some areas, maybe you live in an apartment in kind of a smaller community and there's like a park next door. Maybe you'd be able to hang out a little bit longer there than a high-rise apartment building in the middle of Manhattan. Might be a little bit more doable in that smaller area with maybe a little bit more natural resources around you. And my second tip for folks who might live in an apartment is make as many of your preps portable as humanly possible. I said a second ago that utilizing 55-gallon drums is probably not going to be doable, but there's absolutely no reason why you can't store water in several, like maybe aquatainers, water bricks, aqua bricks, or the military water cans. So that way you can put water different areas in your apartment to store it. And also if you need to bug out, you can always carry at least some of those water containers with you, preferably all of them. Then also, as far as food goes, something like freeze-dried food, that's going to be very lightweight. It's going to be easy to transport that to your car. If you need to get out, you can either buy the pre-packaged buckets that come with several different varieties of food, or you can do what I do most of the time and just pick up a pouch or two every now and again when you're at the store, like our local Walmart sells Mountain House, and then put those in a 5-gallon bucket and seal it up. Most people that are in fairly decent shape, fairly normal size, can probably carry 4 buckets at once using the handles. So that's not going to be too hard to take out to your car. Now, as far as stuff in your pantry, like canned goods and then also boxed pasta, you can always have some maybe like little plastic boxes or even cardboard boxes that you keep stuff like that organized in your pantry, and you can always just grab the whole box at once and carry that out if you need to. Then also you want to make sure that you have something like a lights out kit that has all of the stuff that you would need to deal with the short-term power outage all in one place. So that way you know A, where it's at, and B, if you gotta grab that and go, then all of like your headlamps, your LED lanterns, rechargeable batteries, all of that's in one place and you can get to it and you can just load it right up in that container. And I did a video over a lights out kit a couple weeks ago, and I'll be sure to drop a link to that in the description below. And then also, as far as portable power goes, I highly recommend that if you can afford it, getting a solar generator, because you can take those pretty much everywhere. The actual power station part of it that holds the battery, that usually weighs somewhere between 20 and 30 pounds, and usually a panel is about 10 pounds each for the just normal foldable or packable type panels that usually come with those types of devices. So they're really good for having power where you need them. You can even hang up the panels in your window if you have a window that faces the sun inside of your apartment, so you can use that if you're not having to bug out. And if you have to bug out, you can just throw them in your car really easily. And then another prep that you can always take with you is going to be your skills. If you are in like the medical community, that's going to make you very valuable if you have to leave your home and then go hang out with some other people in their group. You want to have something marketable so you're not just somebody showing up and being another mouth to feed. You want to have something to contribute. So of course, medical's good. If you have a ham radio license and you can bring that equipment with you, that's great. Just think about different skills that might be useful in a long-term emergency situation. And that kind of brings me to my next point. If you're not able to stay at your apartment or your rent house and ride out a longer-term disaster, you need to make sure that you have a very well thought out, well organized bug out plan. Because being a prepper that lives in something like an apartment or a rent house, you do need to take the idea of you might be forced to leave that location very seriously. So you want to have your vehicle in as good a shape as possible so it can make the trip. And if something like small goes wrong with that vehicle, even if you don't have any mechanical experience, you want to be able to fix those problems as much as possible. You know, making sure your tires are in good shape. Don't let those treads get too low. Be sure you have an inflator in your car that can run off of the cigarette lighter port. And also make sure you have a spare tire. A lot of cars nowadays are being shipped out or being sold to people without spare tires, which I think is stupid, but considering how much people rely on AAA and all that other stuff, it's reduced the demands for it. So make sure that when you get a car, you get a donut with it. Then also you want to make sure that your gas tank is always at least halfway full, and that's a good idea for anybody, but it's especially important if there is more of a likelihood that you will have to bug out than being able to bug in. And then also, as far as keeping the vehicle running, make sure you have jumper cables, or even better, one of those battery jump packs, and get something a little bit larger than what you think that you may need to make sure that you have plenty of power to start up that car without having to fuss with it. And also, know exactly where you are going. Try to have that determined beforehand so that when you're on your way there, you're not trying to call somebody and be like, hey, Uncle Ted, I'm on my way. No, you need to have that worked out ahead of time. If you live like somewhere like a destination location, maybe you live on the coast and you're having to get out of the way of a hurricane, it might be a good idea to, let's say you have a relative that you plan on heading to if there's a storm you have to evacuate from. Maybe offer to let them stay the weekend at your place since you live next to the beach or something like that. And I know not everybody's in that situation, but try to offer them something as well and have that worked out before you need it. And also, have a checklist. Make sure that you know exactly what you are going to be taking with you. And practice loading that up different times of the day. Be sure you know where everything is going in your car in its exact spot. And I did an article over on my website. If you didn't know I have a website, I do. And it also has a lot of the stuff on there that preppers like to talk about that YouTube isn't all that friendly about. So I will be sure to link down to my when to bug out article on that website. There's also a checklist on there that you can download as well. And then also kind of browse around there and see what else you're interested in that maybe I haven't covered on this channel yet, because I've been working on the website way longer than I have the YouTube channel. And also you want to make sure that you have a good, well thought out, well organized bug out bag. If you don't have a bug out bag yet, go ahead and pick up a copy of the book Build the Perfect Bug Out Bag by Creek Stewart. It is an excellent resource and it'll help you build your own kit that you can utilize, which is much better than just buying some store-bought thing filled with junk. So I will link to that in the description below as well. And my fourth tip for folks who live in an apartment or other type of small dwelling is to really focus on your organizational skills. Take advantage of the spaces underneath, behind, and next to your furniture. Like even if maybe you can't fit, like maybe even something like a water brick up underneath your couch, you can probably stick some canned goods up under there or something. And as far as like if you have high value preps, make sure you hide those, because there's all the time like maintenance folks coming in and out of your apartment, and the security on those usually aren't that good. So one idea I actually got from the Creek Stewart Bug Out Bag book was to hide like your bug out bag in laundry. And of course that can work for other items as well that maybe you don't want people seeing. And then also be sure you purchase shelving. That's one thing I did. I had some shelves in one of our closets and in our outdoor closet that allowed me to store different preparedness items, things like water, batteries, and then even fuel. You have to be very careful the types of fuel and the way that you store it living in an apartment, but you want to make sure that you can store as much things as you possibly can. And as far as your pantry goes, if you do not have some sort of like rotation system, that is an excellent thing to add. It's going to allow you to utilize all of that vertical space in between the shelves in your pantry so that you can fit as many canned goods as you can in there. And I would recommend, if you guys have seen those like collapsible like carrying bins, go ahead and put one of those in the pantry as well, so that if you need to head out quickly, then you can just pull the cans off of that can rotating rack, put them in that collapsible box, or maybe a few of them to reduce the weight of each one. That way you're ready to go at a moment's notice. And then also get rid of the stuff that you don't use. That's one thing I really need to do. I'm kind of a pack rat. I get it from both of my grandfathers, so I'm doomed. But I really got to go through some stuff. And also have things that can be used in multiple ways. And what I mean by that is have preps that have daily uses as well. A Berkey is a good example of something that's kind of obvious. You can use a Berkey every single day to filter tap water, so it gets rid of all the nasty municipal water taste. But you can also use it to filter rainwater during a long-term emergency. Another thing is, if you're just living on your own, you're probably not going to need like a knife block with like 8 steak knives and then all this other stuff. When I just got out on my own and I was living by myself when I got my first job, I used just a hunting knife as my kitchen knife, and it worked great. And I think a good option for folks who maybe don't have something like that right now is going to be a Mora. Those things, they're super sharp. Stainless ones are going to be great in the kitchen because you don't have to worry about them rusting as much. And if even you have like a nephew, grandson, son, or daughter, whoever that's out living on their own and you're trying to get them set up, then a Mora, it's going to have two purposes. You can use it just for normal food prep purposes in the kitchen, and it's also a decent bushcraft and survival knife as well if you don't have anything else. And my fifth tip for folks who live in an apartment or other type of small dwelling is to have multiple water filters. I mentioned having a Berkey because it's great for daily use and also emergency use, but also have filters that you can take with you even if you have to bug out on foot. Now, if you have to bug out, load up the Berkey in your car. If at all possible, take that thing with you. but also have things like Sawyer Minis, Sawyer Squeeze that you can stick in your bug out bag, or Grail filters. Those are awesome as well because they're actually water purifiers. They come in a few different sizes. I have the Grail GeoPress that I included in my top urban survival tools video. I like to just use that every day. I actually carry it to work with me, and if anybody asks about it, I just say I hate the way that the tap water here tastes, and I'm tired of buying water bottles, and usually that shuts people up. But even if you have to abandon that Berkey, like something happens with your car and you have to continue on foot, then you can still have those water filters with you so you can have clean water no matter where you go. And also, along the lines of water, make sure that you have things like tarps and buckets that you can use to capture rainwater, because you're not going to be able to put a gutter system up for the purposes of collecting rainwater. So have buckets and other things that you can stick under downspouts. You can set up tarps to channel water into different types of containers. And also, I mean, if you have something like a porch, get you some paracord, a couple hooks, hang that line from one end of the porch to the other, put some towels out there, really cinch them down with some nice clamps, and when it rains, let those towels soak up the rainwater, bring them into a container, and repeat as long as you have rain, so that way you at least have some sort of makeshift water catchment system. And guys, winter is coming up very, very soon. Temperatures are already dropping, even here in Texas. So if you did not check it out already, go ahead and take a look at my How to Survive a Winter Storm video, which you can check out by clicking on the card. Y'all have a good one. Thanks again.